Welcome back to A Look in the Mirror. I am Ben here with Brian and Maggie to talk about the final episode, episode 6 of season 7 of Black Mirror. The first time that Black Mirror has really truly done a full official sequel episode. It's been, like they kind of played with it, obviously, earlier in the season with Plaything. But we have USS Callister Into Infinity. It's a full-on sequel to the season 4 episode USS Callister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a whole movie. It's pretty crazy. I liked it, but Maggie, before recording, you have stronger feelings about it, so I'm gonna let you have the floor.
Listen, USS Callister was not my favorite in the beginning of anyways. We talked about this previously. It was fine. It was a great episode, but just not a big highlight for me. I think as the first Black Mirror's first attempt at a sequel, I kind of had high expectations for what this would be. And, for it to will this be a precedence moving forward with other episodes? And I think it was bad. I hope that we don't get more sequels. I don't think this episode added anything new to USS Callister, and I think that's kind of the point of what sequels are supposed to do, is to add. I think it just rehashed things we kind of already know. Maybe it made people feel better because the ending of USS Callister was kind of rough for those characters, and yay, they get their happy ending now. And I don't need that. I don't need a happy ending. I was not a big fan of this episode. I can go into it.
I think it's fair. I think my reason that I didn't love the first USS Callister was because, to me, the ending was it felt like the ending was trying to be a happy ending, but it didn't logically feel like a happy ending to me because of the things that kind of were set up and exposed in the sequel, which is what I feel like being a real person stuck in an MMO would be horrible.
Yeah.
For exactly the reasons that we saw in Into Infinity, because you're basically everyone around you is feels like they're playing a game, and you're just trying to fight for your actual life, and you're you're stuck in a never-ending loop of playing this game that's not a game because it's your real life to you, and that to me was actually kind of interesting. And when I finished USS Callister, I was like, this. They're selling this to me like it's a happy ending, but it's not. It doesn't make sense in my brain that this would be a good resolution.
And then USS Callister 2 ended the exact same way. I don't think maybe it wasn't necessarily being sold as a happy ending, but oh no, most of our cast are stuck in a situation they can't get out of. I don't think it was shocking at all. It's the exact same ending.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at least in this case, the solution makes there's they kind of acknowledge that it's not a good situation, and they do it in kind of a kitschy way where they're haha, we're in your head, we close our eyes when you're getting dressed or when you're hooking up with randoms off of dating apps, but there's a path forward for a solution, which is just take them out and put them into a server, right? That's a very obviously it's easy to say that, but that's a solution. I can be okay, I see the path forward for a solution where everyone is happy, and I see the vision. At the end of USS Callister 1, I was I don't really see the vision here for how this ends well for anybody. Because Nanette is essentially culpable in killing her boss. There's really no way to there's no actual story resolution there that we get in the first episode, and we kind of get it sort of in this episode. And Walton still exists in the real world, and he's still an asshole, and there's no we don't even really address him as a character in any meaningful way in the first episode, where at least here there's some arc with him where he gets a comeuppance and like, you know, like his assholery plays like a more meaningful role in the plot as opposed to like in the first episode. It's just used as a justification for what Robert Daly does to him, but like not really, because he also does it to plenty of other people that are totally innocent and have like they've done nothing to him. We get like a little bit more of a look into Robert Daly's background. You know, not that it like super justifies his character or like the fact that he's like a rapey weirdo, but like at least we kind of build him out a little bit as a character, even though kind of it's posthumous and it's like an AI. Like, I don't know.
But did we? You know, we're kind of jumping ahead into the episode a little bit, but thinking about Robert Daly, we have this build up to meeting this character for the very first time. We don't know if he's going to be the same Robert Daly as he is in real life. This is an AI from a younger version of him. You know, there's going to be this whole big thing, and it just ends up being the exact same guy.
Yeah.
And like, you know, maybe there's some sort of commentary there of, you know, human, like nurture versus nature and things like that, and like he was just always an asshole, so he's just going to be an asshole. But like, I don't like, so when you don't have any character development, you have no changes as a character, you know, in the end, the reveal is just like, oh, AI Daly is still an asshole. What's our purpose?
I thought Nanette had some interesting character development. Yeah.
And then she ends up being an asshole at the end, though, too.
I mean, I don't know. I think like I think Nanette for me is like a flawed, but not like talk about with Eulogy, right? Where like you can be like a flawed person without being like ontologically evil, right? Like I think Walton and Daly, you know, both have enough elements to them that I'm like, yeah, they're just bad people, right? Like, you know, like Daly is like a rapey weirdo, and Walton is like a sociopath, right? And there's not really like a ton of redeeming qualities to them. Like you can kind of see the path that like leads them on to where they end up, but like it's not really like redeeming. Whereas like Nanette has like personality flaws, but like she has character growth, and I think is like ultimately like a relatively good person.
Yeah. I agree. I guess I agree with that. You know, she did have character growth, things like that. You know, and this episode was definitely a focus on her character development. Everyone was kind of supporting that, moving along. I felt it was sort of similar to, you know, in episode 1, though, with, you know, we have Nanette, who's this kind of more timid individual having to step up and take control and be a hero. And I think that's kind of what happened into Infinity as well, is that she had maybe more moral dilemmas of how she has to captain this crew. But I still think it's kind of a similar end for her. You know, I don't know if she had that much character growth.
What are your thoughts, Brian?
Sorry.
No, this is great conversation about it. I mean, all the people in, you know, the USS Callister put in a really horrible position. You know, born into this situation that was really, you know, horrific, and then escape to what they think is going to be a better situation, only to find like it's horrible also. And then it's like there's really no like good end game for them other than this maybe like mythical server of abundance if they can just like figure out a way to get there. But I think, you know, it's very interesting. Like, I guess the dynamic is how companies subjugate and take advantage of their employees in ways and dehumanize them. Like we saw, obviously, really dehumanizing them by cloning them into your game. But, you know, the what's his name, the other guy, the other head of the studio, Walton. He can't even remember anyone's name. I don't think he knew one person's name.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like ultimately that kind of played into him being caught for when he was trying to infiltrate the ship, right? Like that was almost like demonstrated as like this is coming back to bite him, where he doesn't know Nate's name, the intern in real life, and then like the basically like second in command on the ship, and like he's like, yeah, what's my name? He's like, intern guy, get me some coffee.
Yeah, and it's just like a very extreme version of that, and like obviously they do the same thing to the players within the game, where it's like he doesn't see them as people who need like to have a good experience. He just sees them as like people who can give him money. Like I think there's even at the end like a monitor of like the transactions per like minute, and like they all go down once it goes down. Like that's all he cares about. He doesn't give a shit about this really revolutionary and crazy technology that could be used for all kinds of cool stuff. He's just like, okay, but how do I make money from it? Which is very realistic for video games these days. Is like, wow, video games are this really insane thing, but they're held back a bit by this need to like wring every last dollar and cent out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely no fault of USS Callister into Infinity and into the writers of Black Mirror. But unfortunately, I think with the timing of this being so after Severance, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, right? Between you have the same person on the inside and the outside. And even for a moment, I honestly thought they were going to go down this rabbit hole when Nanette's character is in that coma and like, who's going to fight? Is it going to be the video game Nanette, or is it going to be like real person Nanette's going to be able to like come out and take control? And it's like no fault to them. But when you just finish watching Severance season 2 and you jump into this episode, one's obviously a lot better than the other. And, I agree. The commentary of, video games in the video game industry and its abuse of its creators and its, designers and things like that, that is interesting. And we kind of got a little bit more into that. My favorite part of the whole episode is the background memory of Walton discussing when he first met Daly and how that Daly's got uploaded. That was, to me, the best part of the whole episode. That was very interesting. I thought that was the only thing that really brought anything new into this, but everything else was just like, yeah, I guess, how are they going to escape this? And it's just another escape episode.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, for me, I guess like I didn't like USS Callister 1, and I liked this episode, and like I didn't love this episode, but like compared to the first one, I definitely like this one more. So I think that's kind of like where I'm standing, where I'm like trying. I guess I'm like defending the episode almost because I think it's just like I'm happy that it got made because it made a lot of my issues with the first episode like less important, because a lot of my issues in the first episode kind of got solved in this one. But yeah, I mean, as far as like an episode of Black Mirror, it's still like I would say middle of the road for me. Because I think like, yeah, I think the things that it was like the ideas it's kind of talking about and like the exploring, I guess, aren't like really like crazy. Like they're not like some revolutionary ideas that are being explored here. It is almost kind of just like a mediocre, like an above average like sci-fi movie, which is fine. So that's kind of just how I'm looking at it, right? Where like taking the two episodes together, it makes kind of one like 7 out of 10 sci-fi movie for me, which is good enough. And for me, like the first episode alone was like felt like only half of a 7 out of 10 sci-fi movie. So I was like, this is really bad. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of like conclusion here that makes sense. So I guess that's kind of why I'm happy they made the sequel, and kind of happy where they took it, because it felt at least like a conclusion to the story they started telling in the first one.
Yeah. I think like one of the things, honestly, I feel could have helped for me personally with the sequel is if it was the first episode of this season. I think it was just very hard to go from eulogy, which was a much more interesting story in my opinion, much more interest in cinematography and better writing overall, to then jump into USS Callister. And I don't know if it's because Black Mirror was like, oh, it's our sequel, like it's a big thing, we're gonna lead up to stuff like that. But I don't think, and even just like compared to other episodes of the seasons, there were just much stronger episodes. And to end on this one, maybe just because it's like, oh, it's our first sequel, it's exciting. And I know USS Callister is also very popular, so a lot of people are looking forward to that. It was jarring. Like, there are just parts of this episode that did not make sense to me writing wise. The biggest gripe I have was when Nanette first meets Daly and why she just basically explained to him everything of episode 1. Why did she go and talk to AI Daly about why his human self is a horrible person? If I'm meeting someone who is going to determine if I'm going to escape or not, I'm not going to go to them and be like, hey, you're a dick in real life, can you help me? I'm going to butt them up. I'd be like, you're great, everyone loves you outside, help me. Like, I don't understand.
I guess the logic that she was playing at was like, oh, maybe he became that way over time when he became like rich and powerful and like, successful, and like this kind of capturing of him might be a little bit more empathetic and be like, hey, your other portion of your reality did me wrong, so like you kind of like maybe kind of guilting him a little bit, like, hey, you kind of owe me, your real version kind of put me into this situation, can you please like do me a solid and like save me from the situation that your counterpart put me into.
But there are parts leading up to that doesn't make us think that. I don't think she went into him thinking that he is an empathetic person. They talk about it before they meet him. It was like, this guy has been alone for years. That we know self-isolation messes people's heads. We also know that she has PTSD of her interaction with him. I don't think she can make that separation in her mind that AI Daily is different from real life Daily. And so I don't know, if she would have, like, if the thought process was approached him to like be more empathetic to me, I think she just doesn't like this guy. And so I don't get the writing behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean,
so I came to fight today about this episode.
No, I mean, like, it's hard because like I feel like I'm like, in a situation, I feel like I want to defend the episode, but like I also don't think the episode was like incredible or anything. I thought it was like, just like mediocre to above average maybe. So like I don't even like have like strong opinions in terms of defending it. I do agree with the idea, like the order of episodes for the season is always interesting to me, because I'm thinking back to like last season of Black Mirror, where like for me the two best episodes were Lock Henry and Beyond the Sea. And to put those 2 and 3 and then to go 4, 5 until to Maisie Day and Demon 79, which were like, Maisie Day was really bad, Demon 79 was fine, but like yeah, it is like kind of weird. Like I just don't know, maybe they just like don't really think about what order to put episodes in, or like they like think that an episode will be better than it actually is. Because for me, like, I agree, it would have made sense for them to put this first and then to like shift everything else up and have Eulogy be the finale, which I think would have been a really good finale for the season. Especially, I think USS Callister was the first episode of season 4, right? So like it would have also been parallel for that. And then again, like similarly, like last season, I think it would have made sense for that season to end with like Lock Henry episode 4, Beyond the Sea episode 5, and like that would have been like a really good like escalation of the season. But yeah, it is interesting. I feel like they don't really order the episodes in a way that works well.
No.
Maybe they were looking at it less of the narrative and more of the we spent so much money on this episode. It's an hour and a half long.
Well, but you want to put that first then, right? Because you'd want the people to like click into your show to like load into this episode first, so that like they don't have to watch 5 episodes to get to the episode that you spent a bunch of money on, and like this is your big blockbuster hour and a half long episode. Save it for last. Like I feel like that's like, I don't know. I think it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Yeah. I just also think there's like other examples throughout this episode too that just makes it just seemed more crude than a lot of the other episodes of this season in particular. Like, I'm sorry, having Walton alone on his rock and there's been so much emphasis talking about his stupid rock buddy and like making like a sex toy joke about it. I'm like, you can't go from eulogy to that. It's bad. Like, I'm not in that headspace to do that. And there was other moments too when it was just like they're just so obviously telling you things that are going to happen. Like when Net first goes in the coma, I swear there's like a 4-second moment when they're just focusing on the machine that's hooked up to her in her coma. And you're like, oh, well, obviously that's like has access to internet. Obviously AI Nanette's going to upload herself. Like, that's just bad writing. Like, why can't like that been a more reveal later on? They try to make that reveal later on when Daly's like, I could upload you, and they try to make it like, wow, this is so shocking. And I was like, no, they already said that 30 minutes ago when they spent 4 seconds. Like, it was insulting.
Yeah, I mean, they did that with the axe too, right? Where the axe was like a check out the gun, right? Like, I think like that, yes. Right when in the scene where Walton's picking up the axe, I'm like, yeah, somebody's gonna kill the axe.
Exactly. It's just like, there was so many other times throughout this season where it was more subtle and more interesting, and this episode felt like a cheap sequel, which is what it ended up being, in my opinion. Sorry.
No, it's very interesting. I think one of the more interesting things to me about the upload to the actual body is in like all of Black Mirror, we've kind of had like this, it go the opposite way, right? People uploading their consciousness, quote unquote, to games, to cookies, to like San Junipero, like a server. And to me, it was always like, well, that's a copy. Like, you're only yourself and you're getting a copy uploaded to it. And then like this game interface is more just like simulating it within your brain, but you're not actually in it. But then again, I don't know, because Daly died in it because he couldn't get out of it. If they had taken the thing off of his head, would he have lived? I don't know. That gets chubby, but I think like it's very, very much planting its flag that like humans are basically the same thing as like a computer, and like our mind is the software running on the hardware of the body, versus like there's a soul within a human being that separates it from a computer. I don't know if that's interesting to you guys at all, or just like, it was interesting to me. Is like, we can reverse this and upload it to you, and then like this program essentially is running on like the hardware of a human being. And Nanette's, it's like they were like, oh, Nanette, you'll like merge with it, but like, is Nanette gone? Like, is it only the Nanette within it? Like, what is, I don't know. It makes it hairy. And
the way I read it was like, it would take the existing part of whatever Nanette's real life consciousness still exists within her brain dead form, and like merge that with the consciousness of the AI Nanette, and like they both kind of exist as like one unit now. I don't know. Like that was kind of weird to me. And then the other part that like the other like plot point that I didn't understand was like Walton dying in the transition from the like private server to the online larger server space, but a particle of him made it through the like transition, and therefore he got like respawned on a new planet. But like Carl dies because he gets stabbed by real life Walton inside of the video game, but he doesn't respawn even though his like body hasn't been like evaporated. Like what is the difference there? Like why can they not just respawn if Walton respawned when like a particle of his arm hair got through or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't understand. I didn't really understand the logic of that like game mechanic part of it, but it's whatever.
But I agree with you, Brian, though. I do think that's more. That is like USS Callister is a more interesting episode if you do focus on the software of the brain, right? And how that is interpreted. My favorite part of USS Callister was the DNA uploader, not technology, which is just like a plot device to move it along. But that whole thing I thought was more interesting. And same with USS Callister into Infinity, the point with Walton and Daly first meeting, as I've said before, and Daly being uploaded into the system and that commentary on software, which is why like I think it would have been very interesting to see, I guess, a different Daly. I don't know, like that part and thinking of nature versus nurture, and how like it's interesting that Daly ended up becoming the same guy. As this episode as a whole, it's boring, but it is, when you think about it in terms of like your brain and your software, how that's uploaded, and what changes, what wouldn't change, and things like that could have been a more interesting episode. Obviously Daly is a horrible guy and from season 1, but I almost wish there was more focus on him in episode 2, because he is a more interesting character than all the other ones. I don't know if his AI version would have been that interesting in isolation, but I wish they had gone into that a bit more, Brian. I think that's the more interesting part of USS Callister, as opposed to this we have to escape storyline.
Yeah. Instead, he's lived for 500 years, but it doesn't seem like he's changed all that much in 500 years.
Right.
I mean, to be fair, like, he's not really getting any new stimuli. Like, how much can you really change when you're like just in a loop, basically creating, digital planets over and over again? So like you're at that point, you're essentially a robot. You're like a factory robot. Like, you're not really going to have any kind of character development.
So are we going on the assumption though that like young Daly was always was a horrible guy then? Like, would young Daly have also uploaded his coworker's DNA into the system to use as his play devices? Because I don't know if that's the case. We see why old Daly does it, because over time he's become bitter of ignoring him for his project. But young Daly at that point is just like a young guy who's made a cool game.
I think that the foundation of it is there, right? In terms of like nature versus nurture, like it still might be a nurture thing. At least to a degree, because like, he has lived a life up until that point, up until however old he is when he meets Walton for the first time, and eventually like uploads his consciousness into the game design simulation thing. But like, I think there are at the very least like antisocial elements in how he interacts with people at that point that will eventually become like a just flat out like evil behavior once that's mixed with him having money and power and influence. Because like I definitely like his first like reflex when he's dealing with the net in the like AI simulation, when she's like pushing back at him, is to do what he does in the future, which is to like make her mouth disappear so she can't argue with him or argue against him. And like, I think like having that as like a reflex when you have that level of power over somebody, I think is informative to the way that you view other people. And like, I think that both Walton and Daly, to a degree, have like a level of sociopathy to them. It's just that with Walton, it's way more obvious because of his like outward personality. Is like so like he's not really like caging it in this like, oh, I'm a nice guy persona that Daly does, where he's like, oh, I'm just like this like nice guy nerd who's like really obsessed with this like Star Trek like show, and you know it's because of that, like, you know, I'm like downtrodden by society or whatever. Whereas like with Walton, he's like a, you know, he's like a rich fail son who is just given money by his daddy to go invest in random things, and like he's just like openly like has the vibes of like a rich douchebag, and like that paints itself better for the way that you would perceive him to be more sociopathic, like right off the bat, whereas Daly kind of hides it better.
True. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, there's the part I think he literally calls himself like, I'm a nice guy. Like, of course, stay with me. I'm a nice guy. And if I'm remembering correctly, in USS Callister the First, you know, he says the same thing. Like, I'm a nice guy if you get to know me and things like that. So, you know, I agree that in that sense, you know, with that much power, with a guy who has, you know, doesn't have the social cues and stuff like that, I could see how they end up becoming the same person. So then, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to it. What's the purpose of the sequel if it doesn't change it, or if it doesn't add commentary? Nice guys are always nice guys. Yeah, everyone knows that. That's obvious.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I think like part of the sequel is like, you know, the average person who watches Black Mirror really like the first one. They were like, you know, it won an Emmy, and like, you know, like they're like, you know, there's like room here for us to play with a story going forward.
I think if Black Mirror is going to go down this route, if they want to make sequels because people like episodes, they're losing their own plot. They're right, like, you know, especially if they're not going to add anything to it.
I don't think any other episode needs a sequel. No. That I can think of off the top of my head, at least. Yeah.
But even
if you guys have any thoughts.
I mean, we even mentioned it though before too. You know, this season more so than any other, I feel like has had all these Easter eggs, and I'm kind of over it. And like, get rid of that. Just can we go back to the single story and have it be what it is? You can have hints, maybe. Like the fact that now every single episode has that 15 Million Merit song in it. I'm sorry, it's tiring. I love that song, but I just, you know, I really agree with you. No other episode needs a sequel, and I hope Black Mirror agrees with us too, in that they don't think they need to start doing sequels to things, especially if they're just going to say the same story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not much else from my end on this one.
You know, all our actors and actresses were great. Definitely. Jesse Plemons, I love him. Recently was just announced for the new Hunger Games movie, and I'll be very excited to see him that. Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone else was really good, but
was it Jimmy Smits or Jimmy
Simpson?
Jimmy Simpson.
Yep.
Great.
From Westworld.
Awesome. Super underrated actor also.
Yeah, we were talking about Aaron Paul from Westworld, on, you know, Jimmy Simpson, like, you know, just grab all of the, like, you know, the leftover actors and actresses who are on Westworld, you know.
Yeah, there wasn't like a bad performance in Westworld, honestly. Like everyone was so good. Yeah, Westworld podcast coming up. No, we did that a little bit in the past. And they never finished the show, so what is there really to talk about?
Yeah. It's a shame.
It is a shame. And they said that they would tell us what the ending would be if they didn't get picked up anywhere else, and then they just didn't do that. It's like, okay, great. Anyways, Ben, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No. Yeah, Brian and I do a Survivor podcast. We're like halfway through that season right now, so check that out. The Blindsiders if you watch Survivor. Guinness UK again is starting on Wednesday, and then Double Clan next week, season 2. May or may not cover one or the other or both of those, depending on circumstances in or beyond our control.
Yeah, and Maggie, you didn't have much last episode. I doubt in the last 30 minutes you have more you want to plug.
No, other than listen, if you disagree with me, if you really love USS Callister Into Infinity, let me know. Let me know in the comments down below. If you agree with me, disagree with me, why. I would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll just keep this short. I have a sore throat. So if you're watching the video, it saw me having coughing fits every time I tried to speak. And that's why I didn't talk much on this episode. I was trying not to ruin the audio. But
no,
yeah.
Brian, you just really loved it. And you just, were scared. This is not your favorite episode.
Just fuming in the background.
Yeah.
No, man. But yeah, main channel, we get everything. We get sports, those fake nerds, and this channel, Better Radio. Thank you all so much for listening. And we'll see you in the next one. I imagine the next one will be was it
1.5 to 2 years from now?
Right. Well, unless we go back and cover.
That's true. Yeah.
Let us know if that's what you want.
Yeah. What was the first episode called?
National Anthem.
National Anthem. Yeah. Insane that's the first episode of this show.
Yeah, really. Like you said, I think that everybody who watched Slide Mirror should start with that episode, which is like the opposite, I think, of the general consensus.
If you can handle that, you can handle anything.
Exactly. Right. It's very not, it's very outside of like the general vibe of Black Mirror, because there's not a lot of like weird futuristic technology as like a plot element or anything like that. It's literally just like, oh yeah, the prime minister gets blackmailed into fucking a pig for reasons.
Yeah, it's a good filter for sure. It's like, you're probably not gonna like the series if you can't, get behind that episode, quite frankly. So
yeah. No, I agree with you, Ben. I think that is an excellent first episode to start with. Everyone should start with that one. Because I know. I was gonna say I know because I started with season 3 and going back to season 1 after that, it was shocking. I kind of wish I had done it the other way around.
Yeah, I'm just even an anthology series. I'm just like, I have to watch it in order.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Like there's a big discussion of people like finding Survivor lately, being like, what episode or like what season should I watch? It's like, just watch the show, like watch it evolve over the seasons. Like you're gonna be missing context of like the history of the show if you bounce around.
Yep.
So that's how I view this kind of stuff.
Yep, I'm the same way.
So anyways, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one, whenever and wherever that one is.